Listen, Gen X, I see you. Not the version of you that everybody else sees. Not the capable one. Not the reliable one. Not the one who shows up, gets it done, and never makes it anybody else's problem. The real you. The one who sits in the car for a few minutes before going inside after a long day. Because you need just one moment where nobody needs anything from you. The one who lies awake at 3 inches the morning running through the list of everything that's your responsibility. The one who has been strong for so long that you've genuinely forgotten what it feels like to not be carrying something. I see you. And I want to talk to you today about something that nobody ever really talks to Gen X about directly. You were shaped by a world that handed you independence before you were old enough to ask for it. Most of you came home to empty houses. You let yourself in, made your own snack, did your homework alone, and figured out how to fill the hours until someone came home. No one was checking on you. No one was tracking you. You were on your own. Somewhere along the way, you decided that was just fine. More than fine. That's just how life works. And here's what that empty house did that nobody ever fully explained. It didn't just make you self-reliant. It drilled something into the deepest part of how you see the world. It told you that you cannot count on someone being there. That if you need something done, you are the one who is going to do it. That depending on other people is a setup for disappointment. And that the safest thing, the smartest thing is to handle your own life yourself. And for decades, that worked. It more than worked. You became incredibly capable. You figured things out. You fixed things with your hands. You solved problems that stumped other people. You showed up for work before anyone else got there. You didn't complain. You didn't need a trophy for it. You just did what needed doing and moved on. But friend, that kid who learned to take care of everything alone grew up. And now you're somewhere between 40 and 65, and you are still doing it. You are still the one who handles things, who still need you even though they're grown, and the parents who need you more every year, and the health concerns you haven't told anyone about, and the financial pressure that never fully goes away, and the loneliness you feel even in a room full of people, because somehow you're always the strong one, and nobody thinks to ask how you're doing. All of it. All at once. All by yourself. And you are exhausted, Gen X. Not the kind of tired that a weekend fixes. That bone-deep, soul-level worn out that comes from decades of being the person everyone leans on while you lean on no one. The kind of tired where you don't even know how to explain it because you've been carrying it for so long it just feels like personality now. Truth be told, there's even a name for what happens when your brain grows up in that kind of environment. Researchers call it a high-contingency environment, meaning your brain was trained from a very young age to link actions directly to consequences without anyone buffering the gap. You learned real fast that actions have real outcomes, and nobody was going to soften the landing for you. And that kind of upbringing creates people who think 3 steps ahead, who stay emotionally guarded, who cross their fingers for the best but deep down brace for the rug to get pulled out, because honestly, that's what kept happening. And I want to be real clear about something. That's not a flaw. That's not dysfunction. That's survival. That's wisdom earned the hard way, by a generation that had no choice but to grow up faster than any generation before them. But here's what I want you to sit with for just a minute. You brought all of that into your faith. 2. Every single pattern you developed to survive an unpredictable world, you carried right into your relationship with God. You never really asked Him for help either. You figured you'd handle it, get yourself together, and then come to Him when you had something worth bringing. You applied the same logic to God that you applied to everything else. Figure it out first. Don't depend. Don't burden anyone. And if things get too heavy, just push harder. And that, friend, is why your faith is exhausted. Not because God left. Not because you did something wrong, but because you've been treating the one relationship in your life that was designed to carry the weight the exact same way you treated everything else. Like something you have to handle alone. And it was never meant to work that way. Now, before we go to 1 Peter 5, I want to tell you something about the man who wrote it. Because context matters. And this particular writer matters a lot for what we're about to look at. Peter was not a soft man. Peter was not someone who grew up with everything handed to him. He was a fisherman. He worked with his hands in the dark and the cold before sunrise. He knew what it meant to push through when your body was telling you to stop. He was the kind of man who, when Jesus was being arrested in the garden, didn't stand back and wait. He pulled out a sword. Peter was the original Gen X, and Peter failed, spectacularly, publicly, painfully. He denied knowing Jesus 3 times in one night. The man who said, "I will never deny you," sat by a fire a few hours later and told strangers he didn't know him. And then the rooster crowed and Peter went out and wept bitterly. That is not the resume of someone who had it all together. That is the resume of someone who knew what it felt like to fall apart, who knew what shame felt like, who knew what it meant to carry the weight of your own failure on top of everything else. And that is the man who wrote these words in 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 7. Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. I want to slow down on every single word in that sentence, because every single word is doing something important. The word is cast, not carry, not manage, not handle, cast. In the original Greek, the word is epirypto, and it means to throw upon, like you're throwing something heavy off your shoulders onto someone else. Not a careful handoff, not a gentle transfer, a throw, because the weight has gotten heavy enough that the relief you need isn't in carrying it better. It's in getting it off you completely. And the word is all, not some of it, not the parts that feel spiritual enough to pray about, all of it. Every anxiety, every fear, every weight that has been sitting on your chest since you were a kid figuring things out in an empty house, all of it qualifies. All of it belongs in that throw. And then Peter says, because he cares for you, not because you've performed well enough, not because you've handled everything correctly, not because you earned the right to bring it, because he cares for you. The person underneath all of that capability. The kid who learned to be strong because nobody was there to be strong for them. He cares for that person, Gen X. Imagine this. You've been hiking a long trail, miles and miles, and somewhere back at the beginning, someone loaded a heavy pack onto your back, heavy enough to slow you down, heavy enough to make every step cost a little more than it should, and you hiked it, because that's what you do. You didn't complain. You didn't ask anyone to help you carry it. You just adjusted your stride and kept moving, because stopping wasn't an option, and asking for help felt worse than the weight. And now, miles down the trail, someone walks up beside you, strong, capable, more than able to carry what you've been carrying, and they reach out and say, "Let me take that." And the most Gen X thing in the world would be to say, "No, I got it. I've come this far. I'm fine." But friend, you are not fine. You're just used to the weight. And the most faithful thing you can do right now is not take one more step with that pack. It's to stop, turn, and let somebody finally take it. That is what 1 Peter 5-7 is. It's not a suggestion. It's not a nice idea. It's an invitation from someone who is more than capable of carrying what has been crushing you, reaching out and saying, "Let me take that. Now let me show you the signs that the Gen X pattern of carrying it alone has crossed over into your faith. Because this is important. I need you to see yourself in this. First sign, you only pray when things get desperate. Not because you don't believe, but because prayer for Gen X can feel like calling for backup when you should have handled it yourself. So you wait. You try to fix it first. You work the problem. And prayer is what you go to when the working the problem part hasn't worked, which means God only ever hears from you at the bottom. Second sign, you feel more guilty about your spiritual life than peaceful about God's presence. You lie awake thinking about all the ways you're falling short spiritually. You're not praying enough. You're not reading enough. You're not doing enough for the church. And underneath all of that guilt is the same engine that drove everything else in your life. The belief that your worth is directly connected to your output, even with God. Third sign, your faith feels like one more thing on the list. Right next to the job and the mortgage and the aging parents and the grown kids who still need you, faith became a responsibility. Church became an obligation. And at some point, the thing that was supposed to carry you became one more thing you were carrying. Fourth sign. You handle your spiritual life the same way you handle everything else. Alone. The Bible alone. You pray alone. You wrestle with doubt alone. You deal with spiritual dry seasons alone. Because asking for help in your faith feels just as risky as asking for help anywhere else. What if you seem weak? What if you don't have it as together as everyone thinks you do? Friend, I reckon if even one of those hit home, you haven't failed at faith. You've just been applying Gen X operating system to a relationship that was designed to work differently. And the good news is this. The same God who called Peter the original Gen X, who failed publicly and spectacularly, is the same God who is calling you right now, not when you've got it together. Right now. Exactly as you are. So how does a Gen X Christian actually do this? Because I know how you think. You heard all of that, and part of you is already figuring out how to apply it efficiently. You're making a mental checklist, getting ready to handle the process of not handling things alone. Alone. I see you, Gen X. I really do. So let me break this down the way you need it. Practical, plain, no fluff. The first thing you have to do is name what you've been carrying. This sounds simple. It is not simple for Gen X, because you have been pushing through for so long that most of you don't even have clear language for the weight anymore. You just know it's there. You wake up with it. You carry it through the day. You take it to bed. But if someone asked you to describe it specifically, you might not be able to. So here's what I want you to do tonight. Sit somewhere quiet for 5 minutes. No phone. No television, no list of things you should be doing instead. Just sit and ask yourself honestly, what am I carrying right now that I've never handed to anyone? Not what you're managing, what you're carrying. The difference is important. Managing is active, carrying is weight. And there's a weight underneath your managing that you haven't named out loud in a very long time. Maybe it's financial fear that's been running since 2008 wiped out everything you'd built. Maybe it's the loneliness of always being the strong one that nobody thinks to check on. Maybe it's grief you never processed because you didn't have time. Maybe it's a marriage that's holding together on the outside but quieter than it used to be. Maybe it's watching your parents get older and knowing what's coming. Name it. Whatever it is, write it down if that helps. Because you cannot cast what you won't acknowledge. And for Gen X, acknowledgement is often the hardest part. Because naming the weight means admitting it's real. And admitting it's real feels dangerously close to admitting you haven't been handling it perfectly. But here's the truth, friend. Naming the weight is not failure. Naming the weight is the first act of faith. Second thing, practice the 2-word prayer. I know Gen X. Long, polished prayers feel performative to you. You don't trust things that sound too rehearsed. You value plain talk and efficiency. So here is the most Gen X prayer in the entire Bible. Help me. That's it. Not a long prayer. Not a prepared one. Not one you have to feel a certain way to say. Every time you catch yourself picking the weight back up, every time you feel those familiar shoulders rising toward your ears because the independent part of you automatically reached back for it, stop and say 2 words. Help me with this conversation. Help me with this fear. Help me with this weight I've been carrying since 1978 that I don't even know how to describe anymore. Help me. 2 words. And then actually wait for a moment. Don't fill the silence with your next plan. Just sit in it. Because God answers the help me prayer. He always has. You just haven't been saying it long enough to notice. Third thing, and this is the one that goes most against the Gen X grain, you let one person in. Not everyone. You don't have to announce your struggles on social media. You don't have to stand up in church. You're still Gen X. Your privacy is still sacred. But one person, one safe person who has earned your trust, and you tell them something real. Not the polished version. Not the managed version. Something true. Something that costs you a little to say out loud. Because 1 Peter 5 wasn't just written to individuals, it was written to a community. And the humility Peter talks about isn't only vertical between you and God. It's also horizontal between you and the people around you who could carry something with you if you just let them. Here's what I know about Gen X. You will show up for anyone. You will carry anything for someone you love. You'll be there at 2 inches the morning without being asked. You are fiercely, quietly, completely loyal. And you do all of that without keeping score. And somewhere along the way, you decided that accepting the same from someone else would make you a burden. You are not a burden, Gen X. You are a person who has been strong for a very long time, and strength was never meant to be a wall between you and the people who love you. When you start casting instead of carrying, something shifts that I don't think you're expecting. The weight doesn't disappear, life doesn't get easier overnight, but something changes in how you carry what's left. And what's left is a whole lot lighter than what you've been hauling. Prayer starts to feel less like a check-in with a disappointed authority figure, and more like a conversation with someone who already knows everything and loves you anyway. The same 2-word prayer you said in desperation starts becoming the first thing you say instead of the last. The guilt that used to follow you everywhere, the spiritual performance anxiety of never doing enough for God starts to quiet. Because you finally understand that God wasn't waiting for your performance. He was waiting for your presence. The loneliness that comes from always being the strong one begins to ease. Not because you stop being strong, but because you finally let someone walk alongside you. And it turns out that sharing the weight doesn't make you weaker. It makes the walking sustainable. And here's the part I want Gen X to hear most. You stay strong. This doesn't make you soft. This doesn't make you dependent in the way the empty house taught you to fear dependence. This makes you the fully realized version of everything you were always meant to be. Still capable, still reliable, still the one who shows up and gets things done. But now operating from a source that doesn't run dry, carrying what's yours, and casting the rest on the one who was built to carry it. You were built to handle it. That's true. Your resilience is real and it matters, and it is not nothing. But built to handle it never meant built to handle it alone. That was never part of the design. That was something a broken world added on top of you when you were too young to argue against it. The design was always this. You carry what's yours. He carries the rest. And together, nothing is too heavy. Listen, God was not absent from that empty house. He saw that kid come home, unlock the door, and sit down alone. He watched you figure things out before you were old enough to have to. He saw every year that followed, every weight you picked up, every burden you decided was yours to bear alone, every time you helped someone else, and quietly hoped someone would notice you needed help too. He saw all of it. And he's been saying the same thing the whole time that Peter finally wrote down 2,000 years ago. Cast it on me, all of it. I care for you. Not for what you handle, not for how well you hold it together. For you, the full, tired, capable, resilient, quietly lonely, deeply faithful Gen Xer who has been doing it alone long enough. You were built to handle it, but not alone. Cast it, friend, all of it, right now. He's not going anywhere. And it is about time someone carried it with you. If something in this message hit the place in you that has been tired for a long time, don't just keep scrolling. Go to the comments right now and type, "Built for it, but not alone." That's your declaration. That's you telling your heart that the solo act is over and the partnership with God begins today. And if there's a Gen Xer in your life, a spouse, a sibling, a friend, someone who carries everything and never asks for help, someone who would never in a million years admit they're struggling, share this with them today. It might be exactly what they needed to hear. I've got more of these simple, quiet, timeless truths coming your way every single week on Faith Plainly. Because God's truth was never meant to be complicated, friend, and you were never meant to carry it all alone. I'll see you next time.